I'll defer my questioning and turn to Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Senator Coons, and Mr. Perriello, good to see you. It's an honor to serve, serve with you in the House, and thank you for your leadership on this effort. Back in May of 2021, so about 3 years ago, I joined Senator Coons on a trip to Sudan at what you described as a moment of hope. It was a point after the People's Revolution, and I believe that we, the United States and others, should have been more forceful in terms of trying to isolate Hamedi and the RSF back then. They were clearly a rogue operation, and I think more could and should have been done. We are where we are now. So let me just pick up really on some of Senator Menendez's questions, and I think you telegraphed it a little, and I second the call to impose Magnitsky Act sanctions on the RSF and Hamedi in particular. As you said in your testimony, we've got a very dire situation in El Fasher right now that risks an already catastrophic situation in Sudan and likely to lead to atrocities against civilians in Darfur. So what tools are you, the United States, what is the Biden administration doing now, and what other countries are we working with to try to prevent, to deter the RSF from attacking El Fasher?
Thank you, Senator Van Hollen, and thanks for all of your leadership over the years on foreign policy and dynamics with the State Department. We have been very clear with RSF leadership that there will be direct and immediate consequences of an offensive on El Fasher. We have raised this through US-UN at the UN level and elsewhere to try to ensure that more actors are making clear the consequences of this. It is a situation that would be devastating for the reasons that Chairman Cardin and others have noted. It is a last civilian holdout. It's not, I don't say safe haven because I don't think any of us would consider it safe to be living in El Fasher right now, but relative to the alternatives. We also see this having been an offensive by the RSF that has made the war more ethnic and polarized in nature, brought in some of the tribal militias that had been neutral in the war, and that is something that also makes it harder moving forward. But we've also communicated, in addition to the clear legal and moral violations here, that this is a strategic error, and we will continue to do the pressure. But we've been clear about consequences to the RSF leadership in the context of El Fasher before. We have done so again in this case, and we will work with our multilateral partners. I just got back from Addis Ababa, meeting with both the African Union and the high-level panel, and I think there is a strong sense from our African counterparts and multilateral counterparts that this needs to be the world speaking with one voice about the consequences of moving on El Fasher, and that means any of those that are have leverage with the RSF or have been supportive of the RSF need to be strong voices as well in saying that this is not a move that is acceptable under any circumstances. We do continue to see huge fragility and clashes in other parts of the country, and we want to make sure, in addition to the focus on El Fasher, that we continue to see and work on everything from deterring atrocities to getting humanitarian aid in what is a vast, vast country as well.
Well, let me, you mentioned the role of the outside actors, right? The negative role many are playing. If you could talk specifically with respect to RSF about what we are saying and doing with the UAE, I would be interested in exactly what kind of pressure we're exerting there. And on the humanitarian front, you describe in graphic detail the terrible situation there. What are we doing to convince the SAF and other authorities in the area to reauthorize the critical aid corridor from Chad into Sudan?
So in the first, both the State Department and the White House at the highest levels have been communicating with all of our partners in the region the need to pull back from anything that is pouring fuel on this fire. But more than that's expected. We want proactive engagement and political muscle to push to a peaceful solution, and that nothing less than that is going to be acceptable as we go forward. We have gotten commitment from other actors, including the UAE, to participate in the new round of peace talks. We think that's important, along with the addition of Egyptians, the African Union, and others. We are seeing a larger number of actors engage in calls to those who've been supporting. Unfortunately, we're seeing a larger number of external actors play into this conflict. Some of those reports and actions, I think, have reminded some of our partners why pursuing this war may be disadvantageous for everyone involved and resolving it more quickly, rather than seeing the kind of failed state that, as you know, many years ago was the land where Osama bin Laden built up al-Qaeda and planned attacks on U.S. soil. Seeing a failed state in a country of this size and strategic importance is in no one's interest. And so I think, in addition to communicating the importance of consequences in this case, it's also being very clear that everybody loses if this war is pursued in the way it's been pursued, and everybody can stand to benefit from a stabilized Sudan back in the hands of the Sudanese people. On the aid corridors, we've had minor victories here and there of getting food through, but we are appalled at the systemic violations of international humanitarian law by the armed forces that wants to be treated and held to a higher standard, which they should be as a legitimate military institution. But if your response to that is to be enabling the starvation of the Sudanese people through everything from outright blocking of aid to ways of disrupting that flow, certainly the RSF needs to answer for a lot of the fragility that came from burning the harvests and burning the storehouses of food, harassing and attacking humanitarian workers, which SAF has done as well. We are in one of the toughest humanitarian situations in terms of delivery in the war, in the world, and as I mentioned before, it's about to get worse. The rainy season in Sudan brings a spread of disease. It's not a country that has a lot of hard tarmac roads, so we've been clear with SAF that the expectation is full access, both from Adre and Port Sudan, with unlimited access for aid workers across these hard tarmac roads. And so far, we have not seen that response. I will say it is very helpful that you all have passed the supplemental funding, because I think the sooner we have that aid present and forward deployed, then I think it's easier to find ways, more ways to get it inside. So I think the international community's had to do its part. And I think that was one of the shocking things that Senator Booker and I saw in the camps, was even in Chad, where we have full access to the camps, you were down to about one meal a day. They were rationing because they didn't have enough resources. So we need to attack this problem from multiple angles. We need to make sure there's enough food and medicine there and that it's forward deployed to at least get to the people outside, and some of that can make its way inside, and continue to put full pressure on both sides to ensure the kind of humanitarian access. And I will say, at the African Union 2 days ago, one of the leaders made a very powerful argument that we all know well of why international humanitarian law works. People have been having wars for centuries. They've been having wars for millennia. It is not true that you cannot deliver aid in war. In fact, there's a reason that we have the laws of war and that we have these humanitarian law. It is absolutely a baseline standard that starving people should not be part of how you conduct a war. And we continue to express the fact that there will be consequences for those violations. So some progress, particularly in, I think, our ability to increase aid on the outside, but also needing to get a major breakthrough on access internally.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Van Hollen. Thank you for joining me on that trip back in 2021 when there was so much hope.